Here we go. This is Eric Stromquist. Welcome to Control Talk Now, your smart buildings videocast and podcast for the week ending July 22nd, 2018. This is episode 275, where we talk about all things smart controls and smart buildings and whatever else we want to talk about. But what would the show be without my co-host and yours, the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only, Kenny Smyers? The control man boxer from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, former Golden Gloves champions at
Not true. No, somebody's going to beat me up because you said that.
Myers. Welcome, big dog.
Yeah, I want to clarify to the Controltrends community that I have very limited boxing experience. I got my nose broken several times as a kid, but abandoned that. It was way too tough and too hard. I went to
That's
football.
when they knew he was going to be smart, man.
I went to football, baseball, basketball.
This guy's nose broke a couple times and he quit. So that's how smart the man is. Dude, we got a big show this week. We got a couple of guests. We're going to hop into it. But first, before we do that, I want to thank KMC for the really cool hat. As Kenny and I have said a lot on the show, you send us your swag, we'll wear it. We love wearing it, especially when you're bald like me. You like to cover the dome up. Kenny, not so much because he's got perfect hair. But that's the way that goes. So anyway, dude, what you been up to?
Well, not much, Eric. As you said, there's a lot going on. The industry is on fire with change, with disruption, with cool products, with new people, new hires. We got two great interviews. I'm excited about the show because there's just so much to get accomplished here. I think we have two interviews, again, with two very important people. That one's a young emerging superstar, started his own company and has come up with incredible strides in open sourcing of solutions for the industry. And the other one is a veteran from Silicon Valley, and she has taken recently a new professional procession, I believe you used the word, that she's been taking a very important role and a very challenging role. And we'll be talking with her very soon. But we have a couple of regular old posts that are.
Well, hang on a second. I want to hop in real quick because our young superstar is let me know that he's going to be doing a lot of visual stuff, and not to dissuade our podcast listeners, but we're about 10 to 20 to 1 podcast listeners to videocast listeners. Just to let you know, when he comes on, you might want to, go to the to Controltrends and watch that video portion, because I have a feeling if it's like we've seen in the past, it's going to be something you're going to want to see. So it's going to be more of a visual type interview. So give you a heads up there. But yeah, now let's get back to the couple of posts we got, because I want to dig into these guests.
All right, Eric. Well, first up, we have Contemporary Controls. These guys are just, they're again, I always use the analogy where George Thomas, an incredible veteran in our industry, started from his basement, literally with electronics as a young person, and then developed a global company that it's just really quiet but effective. I mean, every time I turn around, I see Contemporary Controls has a product somewhere, a control panel. I see they're in Europe all the time. They're making strides over in England and Germany, but they've come up with a new product again, and again, they're very concerned about making things faster, easier, and cleaning up the network. And so they give a great learning tool on their website, explaining networks, explaining BACnet, explaining stuff. But this is marketing here. They have introduced an EIGR router, and that adds OpenVPN server functionality. And basically, we have a nice post in there. Please read it, and then you can go onto their site, because they also have Contemporary Controls newsletter for the month of July. But basically, what I see here is it's a challenge to set up an OpenVPN server on your own. And they make it easier. And then when you get onto the network, what do you want? You want clarity. You want speed. You want to get things done. So they've also made this thing so each device is it's too technical to read to the Controltrends community. For people that are interested in networking, there's a very important post by Contemporary Controls that gives you more insight into the OpenVPNs and this router is going to be your best friend when you're trying to get one of those established, and make sure that you have client functionality at the highest level.
Very, very cool. And Kenny, I'm just getting the 411. Our first guest is teed up and ready to go. So let's bring her on.
Well, I'd love to, Eric, because it's kind of exciting because we have a new title for Miss Therese Sullivan, our eyes and ears out of the Silicon Valley. And Therese is now the channel director and customer channel leader for the Tritium Honeywell group. And welcome to the show, Therese. Congratulations.
Welcome, Therese. Congratulations.
Thank you.
For
yeah,
sure.
I made the big leap into corporate land, and I like it. I like it a lot. It's
well, you did, and now we got our eyes and ears inside Tritium and Honeywell. And I think, Therese, when we first met, and I think this is really smart on Honeywell and Tritium's part, when we first met, one of the comments you made to us was, well, hey, you guys are kind of inside the bell jar, so you can't necessarily really see what's going on. And I'm outside, so I've got sort of an unbiased sort of a view into the bell jar. And I think this is going to bode really well because you're getting to hop in the bell jar with the rest of us, but I don't think you're going to leave that outside perspective behind, are you?
No. I'm actually going to remain in California, and just that viewpoint on Silicon Valley is still very important. As you call me, I'm the queen of Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
So it's I'm going to be bringing that perspective and voice of the customer over these years, which I think now I've been in buildings since 2007 with that net zero energy building, but over the last 4.5, I've been contributing an article a month to automated buildings, and have talked to so many customers and gotten close to so many of our trusted platform. We'll get back to talking to my article about trust that was in July, but getting close to the customers and bringing that customer perspective, voice of the customer into everything Tritium's doing, from product marketing to sales channel relationships, to marketing communications. So it's fun. It feels like a really good fit for me.
Great. Well, we know there's a lot going on with Niagara, and hopefully you can give us some insight. That's what we're here for to do, is to filter the information that's going to impact our industry. And a lot of people have a lot of eyes waiting on what's next at Niagara. I know they introduced a lot of stuff down there at NOLA, the Summit 2018.
Right.
And
so we're right at the point where the OEMs now have product for Niagara 4.6, which is a really important release, one of the biggest strides, biggest steps up for Niagara for years. I can't, maybe since Niagara 4 point itself, but yeah, you've got better mobile responsive interfaces. There's I think really important where Niagara's going, and another match with me is tagging, that this release really helps with the tag enabled approaches to being able to, they call it bulk deploy, but that idea of you update once and you're able to fan that out to every instance through appropriate tagging. So lots of efficiencies between the supervisors and the field controllers with that tag support that's built into 4.6. Security is unsurpassed. Niagara's really stayed on top of that. So yeah, it's like a really important release, and it sets us up also for the Edge release this summer. So
Well,
and
speaking of that Edge release, I don't know if you had a chance to catch our interview last week with Ken Notre-Dame Sinclair,
I
aka
did
Otto,
listen.
Mr. Sensitive, Mr. Let's have the building.
Touchy-feely.
Yeah, touchy-feely. But he was talking a lot about the Edge controllers and how that was going to be sort of a key component to sort of allowing that sort of stuff. But you're a Silicon Valley girl. I mean, this touchy-feely stuff's got to make sense. How do you see Niagara and Honeywell sort of playing with that? First of all, do you think it's a real thing, meaning that it's important? And if so, how do you kind of see you guys playing in that arena?
Well, I think there's something I wanted to inject into that conversation, and I'll start with that. Is that user experience is what we're finding is that these IoT value chains are very long. They can be Microsoft is estimating 25 partners possibly in a value chain to make something like that work, some sort of I don't know if you guys had a chance to talk to Zorba from Microsoft very much uh, at the Realcomm conference, but he's all about the water and following the bathroom stuff. And you think, oh, that's trivial because every time he gets up, he's talking about toilets and restrooms, and but he's making it. He is making an IoT workflow work. And starting with something, and I won't even call that small because we're in drought here, but it can be 25 partners long. And yes, there's technologies to put together, but more than that, there's business and business relationships. And if the vendors aren't working in the background to facilitate the smooth, uninterrupted flow of building data into something like the CMMS system, none of that's going to work. So it's not about the technology getting better. And yeah, voice is super exciting, and augmented reality. And yeah, Niagara has got some exciting business relationships coming up in those areas. But I think the key business relationship and that business interoperability, those vendors working in the background to make the customer, like whatever flow they want of data, work, those business relationships, Niagara has got some big announcements with some of the major, for example, again, the flow between analytics and CMMS systems. Niagara's now got big relationships with some of the biggest facility software developers like Accruent.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I think that's what's going to make that touchy-feely stuff work.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
it's the technology,
so
but
so
more
so
than
so.
that,
Oh, but
how
I
are
was
you
just
making those partnerships work? It's
right. And so to me, Niagara to me was always kind of like a hub, right? It was taking disparate systems. It was a hub that brought them together and allowed them to sort of be normalized and talk. And it seems to me like one of the things that's happening is you're just taking that hub concept and getting much, much bigger, not just about necessarily information and flow, but also partners and how partners can work together through your platform.
right, because if some big corporation X, a big property owner that's got lots and lots of buildings says, we want to put these things together. Well, we have to, how about Beyonce? We got to, fall into formation.
Yeah. Nice. Nice.
Well, listen,
Do the
for me to help,
formation.
I have to
But
keep,
that's what we got to do. The
I
business.
have to translate this so I can follow the conversation, because I really like it, because we used to talk about ecosystems. And one thing that Tritium had done so effectively was establish an ecosystem that involved partners that I assume we're still saying, we say 25 partners long. So now we're seeing something that's evolving beyond an ecosystem to an actual channel, a business relationship, where it's not just an ecosystem where you allow people to create applications and use Niagara framework to their advantage to create another business opportunity. What we're talking about is, like, when you say channel partners, we're talking things like the people that provide analytics, let's just say SkySpark, Sky Foundry, and then, people that did the the applications for diagnostics, fault detection, and then the management of contractor activities like Ant Technology. I'm trying to just see who those 25 partners might be within our Niagara.
I think there's a lot of, there's small partners and big partners. But as we're stumbling around for that word for what is a master system integrator, because he's or she is trusted advisor, they might be a small company, but they're certainly along that value chain that's
Gotcha.
pulling these technologies together. And the example that I think is really at the heart of a lot of this right now is the connection between the analytics and the computerized maintenance management systems, which might be part of the enterprise resource planning, ERP systems. In the enterprise software world, you have all these acronyms. But the big customers already selected SAP or customer relationship management, who's doing that. But to make this whole flow work, and down yet to who buys the actuators. Oh, we're going to put in all these VAVs. Are they Belimos or are they somebody else's? There can be all of sensor makers, wireless providers, in the flow. And to make it seamless, first of all, tagging, calling things the same name through that whole flow so the data can be pulled through. But then just having the business relationships so that whatever that interface is, the touchy-feely thing, it's consistent. It's that one pane of glass. It was easier to control the one pane of glass, and I'm just simplifying that with that metaphor, when you could control that whole value chain, when you could say everything's going to be Microsoft or everything's going to be Siemens. But now really you have to have a workflow, a flow of data through so many different interfaces.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say, Therese, is it's like now you're connecting people through the platform instead of just processes. So like, now the guy that's actually working in the, cleaning the toilets can interface, and that data can go all the way up through the different business relations, because people do different things, right? Now they're going to have access and they're going to be able to be connected, whereas before you probably still picked up the phone and called, or somebody had to enter the data. What it sounds to me like you're doing is you're streamlining that process, so you're connecting businesses as well as information and processes and things that are happening.
Right.
Sounds like a great, like I said, I think you guys are the business hub. It's like, if you want to buy something on the App Store, you go to Apple, and you want to, if you want to get involved in the business of buildings, you better be familiar with Niagara and Tritium and Honeywell and everything else, because that's what's going to connect it all together.
Right. And the other in the ISVs is what we used to call them, but independent software vendors, have been coming to Tritium because it's the obvious holder of the data. It's the obvious player right now. And whatever the customer wants, again, back to Beyonce, it's whatever the flow the customer wants, the easier you can make it in the background by the vendors working together on the development side and say, how's this going to look to the customer when and I'll stick there for a minute because that's, I think, a heart piece, the analytics to the CMMS system, or even below that, the building data into analytics. It might be somebody in finance and accounting that wants that data, and they want analytics from Microsoft, and they want still to send it to generate automatic work orders, so they still want it to go to Accruent facility management software. That's the software facility managers in their portfolio are used to using. Well, those business relationships in the background, and business relationships, yes, go to market, but even down to, in some cases I predict to get that best user experience, it's going to be down to the developers. Is what does that interface look like? Are you using Haystack? Yeah, we're using Haystack. Well, we are too. That means that we can make this look that much better in terms of the pane of glass.
Well said, Therese. Well said. Well, listen, are you still going to be doing buildingcontext.me and still writing articles for automated buildings and still coming on our show?
Yeah, I mean, and I should have said it here, that I get to, I am, full disclosure, an employee of Tritium and Honeywell, but with Building Context, I speak on my own. That is my own brand, and I still get to be Therese.
Nice.
So
Kenny, you and I were both blown away by our last article, right, in automated buildings.
Well, yeah, we get a couple of things to get to, but that's a good segue into. You had a great post on the automated buildings, Therese, that I read, because it was right after we had had the excitement and came out of Realcomm IBCon, and it was kind of interesting because you used the Las Vegas slot machine, big trust win, like TRUST letters fall in and spell trust. So that's kind of a cool play on things. But where were you? What was your? What were you trying to get across there? What was your primary theme?
Well, the primary thing is, again, there's this new, relatively new buzzword, or that you and Ken Sinclair were talking about either the last time, the previous time he came on, he brought it home from Helsinki
Right.
of idea of a platform of trust. I mean, Niagara is a platform of trust as well. But I loved the Realcomm itself. That what do you mean by platform of trust is what I was playing on. And first of all, Realcomm itself, 20 years. Really BachNet has been 20 years in the making, and Niagara's been 20 years in the making. And that was just such a moment of celebration. Realcomm, automated buildings, thereabouts. I know Controltrends came up in that history. Let's call it 14 years ago. But even, with the idea in your head to where you really executed that, all this stuff has created a platform of trust in terms of people being able to meet and push the conversation forward. So that was a platform of
That's
trust.
really
And
cool.
then they
That's
brought
good
the
stuff.
20
Yeah.
people on the stage. I love that moment. I mean, I'm not saying I almost teared up, but you just really clapped heartfelt when you saw John Petsy and Daryl Smith and Paul Oswald. I can't name them all. Maureen from JLL, but you knew those people. I've interviewed those people.
Right.
They are the brain trust of the industry. And
it's really cool because I'm looking at that picture right now, and you're right. That was your true graduating class, but also to add to that 20 years of longevity is automated buildings. So it's a crazy intersection. What you just said there, Realcomm, Ibicon came a little bit later, BachNet, Niagara, automated buildings. All these super forces within the industry, the voices of the industries came together and kind of swirled there in a interesting synergy.
It was interesting synergy. So just that idea of that kind of platform of trust. And then I loved what Ken brought home from Helsinki. I mean, he's bringing so much new energy, and I'm really super enjoying it. But that these countries are coming together, and really that's, I would almost say, an extension of blockchain, which what Estonia, Finland, Denmark, a couple countries coming together on buildings and saying, we're going to have a platform of trust here. That on the nation level. So I was building on that. We need platforms of trust on human levels, on the levels of these forums where we can discuss the conversation and it kept coming. I was noticing as I listened and I wrote down, I was tweeting, like, again, bringing up Zorba, calling, this is Realcomm's the place we can come together and really talk about stuff. And that's why it's a trust factor. That at every level you need to build trust, and it takes time. And
to our level, and again, I'm referring back to your article towards the end of it, where you say the platform of trust the building owners are now turning to. So we are platforms of trust to our building owners in terms of our, what Eric and I do in our day jobs as distributors, and we work with Niagara and we work with now you, learning where the paths of these trusts take us to. So it's like you need somebody that knows somebody. It's like a network of trust. It's not just the platforms. To me, always refer to, I remember Ken St. Clair's question to us, what is our platform of trust? And we said WordPress, because he said, what do you do all your work? Where do you go to every day and put information in and read information and post information? Where do you put your knowledge in to share with other people and influence people and share with the networking that we do? And so I started to do my own little find out what platform of trust meant to me. Anything from the banking institutions, the insurance. I mean, we're seeing our industry take a change. It's evolving, and so I think these new words we do,
right,
and they're all coming together. But
well, you define it by vocabulary, Ken, like you said, and you think about, Ken, where it started. I mean, we've gotten to the platform of trust, but think about where we sort of started. I mean, Jeff Haupt from AI defined a term that we've used a lot,
Sure.
Ken and Therese, called, we're now in the integrity economy, right? You trade off of your integrity. I mean, that really is, you got to have the skills to be in the game. You got to have all that, but it's your integrity that counts. And then from there, Ken, it came up with Ken Sinclair and yours word with I never get it right, co-competition, right?
Co-opetition.
You might be competing one day and the next day you need to cooperate. So that integrity, trust, co-competition, I mean, it all is sort of gelling together.
And which
it makes
feeds back into my thing about the value chain and get information, as Beyonce said, is that the companies that you were competing with for business yesterday, it's already happening today, of course, but you need to partner with them today. So you have to figure out how you can share, and the partners for every customer might change if we're putting the customer first, as Ken is suggesting, and then the people first. We have to quickly forge these business relationships, and you have to have trust.
Well, Therese, what I really like about this, and again, I applaud Tritium and Honeywell for bringing you on board, is that it is counterintuitive to people like me and Ken who've been in the game for a long time, and to a lot of our peers, a lot of people we know, because it was like if you had a competitive advantage, you kept that, you held it to your chest, you kept your customers to your chest, you kept your technology close to your chest. You did not share. And I think if you use that strategy, which was successful back in the day, if you use that strategy today, you're dead. You're not going to survive.
No.
Agree or disagree?
I totally agree. And I think maybe we have to perceive that we're in a time of abundance. We know, and Silicon Valley certainly says it too often to the VCs because it's much harder than it looks. There's all these buildings, they all need to be fixed.
Yeah.
There's so much work to be done, and we've got to figure out as an industry how to race to the small space, as you guys always say, how to do, but it means changing business relationships, changing your product, edge. I love edge. But we're doing, the technology is falling into place. Business relationships have to too.
Well very well said. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Teresa, I tell you what, unfortunately, we're going to have to hop off, but I think that's probably as good a stopping place as any. We could talk to you forever, and hopefully we will. So can we get you back on the show soon?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to make one more point, and it's probably not necessary, but on the platform of trust and this is from Silicon Valley, which is just a thought mine. I'm talking to Ken Sinclair now. Hi, Ken, is Adobe. That now I'm learning this week that my platform of trust that I use to produce the Haystack magazine, etc., is Adobe Photoshop, Adobe InDesign. This week they announced they're going to move Adobe Photoshop. They'll still keep the PC version, but all onto the iPad. And that's just something blow your mind to think about, changing how that software, you don't want to lose any feature function, but it's going to be on the iPad. And so as we move to touchy-feely, and I don't know if I'm going to love the iPad, but it'll be a nice,
well, let me tell you something, Therese. That movie with Ben Stiller about the circle of trust and the platform of trust. I use Adobe too. If they're going to do that, they're no longer in my circle of trust. I'm kicking them out. I'm going to go to all Apple products now. So, and I invite you to as well. How could they do that to us? Adobe, why did you not consult Therese first?
They won't give up, but it's just, that's what Ken is trying to tell us, that as the value chain, as they stop making as many chips for PCs over in chip manufacturing land and everything goes to the mobile chips, then it's going to be the iPad version that gets better and better and better. Maybe it's going to take 20 years, we just took 20 years. But that's just a milestone point of photoshopping moving from here to here, where you see they're going to keep both alive for a long time, but people will be getting bigger iPads so that all of a sudden it will be not our, and it changes. It's not, I can't stand typing on my iPad, so I'll be using that voice. I'll be using the camera more.
See, I respectfully disagree with Ken Sinclair, and I don't on most things. I think he's been talking to Alexa a little bit
too much.
Therese,
okay,
how do people get? So definitely check Therese out at buildingcontext.me. Therese, I mean, what about is that the best way for them to get hold of you still, buildingcontext.me?
Yes, or Therese.Sullivan@tritium.com.
There you go. And if you want to make her day and on the timeline, want to talk to the Queen of Silicon Valley and now maybe the Queen of Richmond. Therese Sullivan, we appreciate you being on the show. Have a great, great day.
Thanks for talking, you guys. This was fun. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good stuff from Therese. So happy for her new role with Niagara and Honeywell. I think she'll do great things there. So hats off again to those folks for seeing her talent and taking advantage of it. Kenny, our good friend Mark Peacock is on the move. Tell us about our next post.
Again, love to. LinkSpring Edge to Enterprise solution now offers analytics at the edge for building environment and operational systems. So LinkSpring had a very, very important news release on July 18th, 2018. And they were very, very excited that they've got a announcement that says the full release of the Onyx SkySpark Edge Analytics solution, which embeds Sky Foundry SkySparks everywhere, and that's a patented trademark. Analytics solution software is ready for their partners to purchase. They're very excited about it. But basically, Mark always does a great job on it. There's an explanation of SkySpark and how. What's different about this is that the SkySpark Everywhere enables the full capabilities of Sky Foundry SkySpark Analytics software to be deployed in a distributed architecture where multiple nodes work together to perform analytics at the edge, while still providing users with a unified view of their data and analytic results. So it makes use of the project haystack tagging and the data model to add semantic descriptions to the data, and it gives the data the structure and context to be uniform, normalized manner. Haystack tagging enables users to really understand what each piece of data means and how it fits into the overall building.
Well, I tell you, folks, and if you saw our interview with Ken Sinclair last week, and if you didn't, I encourage you to, because all this stuff is great from LinkSpring, but how do you use it and what does it mean? Reference you back to our interview with Ken Sinclair on this show last week, because Ken Sinclair is sort of talking about edge analytics on the edge is going to allow the humanization of the building, if you will, all the stuff Ken was talking about to create a better user experience. But the analytics on the edge was absolutely a key piece in that whole thing. So as usual, Ken Sinclair's right on it, and here comes LinkSpring 1 week out, and they announced they've got the product that he said was going to be needed. So congratulations to the team at LinkSpring, and check out that interview with Ken Sinclair last week if you didn't see it. All right, big dog, and talking about 411, you got busy at Realcomm Ibicon. Tell us about your interview there with the folks at Lucid. I mean, you broke a story out there in Realcomm in Las Vegas.
Well, first of all, again, just to summarize the vendor area of Realcomm Ibicon, we saw technology just flooding the area. I mean, and how we're seeing collaborations and co-opetition, and I think we're going to use that word co-competition because you said it enough that it makes sense to me now. Even though we say co-opetition, co-competition, because what we're seeing is partnerships come together, and sometimes the fastest way to get technology into the market is through acquisitions. And Acuity certainly is no stranger to acquisitions, having just purchased DG Logic and Distech and integrated them into their already existing product portfolio. They also bought Lucid, and we got a chance to talk to one of the national sales managers and one of the people, the tech guru from Lucid. Great interview. Please watch it. But basically, the Acuity product platform needed something that these guys could provide, and that is to provide the lighting integration as SAS, software as a solution. So this is out of the box now, that they can provide an immediate lighting solutions to some of these large commercial, government, and large installations, large enterprise deployments for lighting control. So it's a very, very interesting thing, and congratulations to Acuity. They seem to really be on the path to get these capabilities to the market quickest.
Right, was the bundle, man. It's the power bundles, right? If you start thinking about, and they're bundling together. I mean, we talked about Siemens acquisitions last week, where they bought some companies, some lighting companies, and stuff like that, and J2. But I think everybody's sort of getting to that user experience, and having the building automation control system be the hub of that user experience. So it's good stuff. So. Wow, well done, Kenny. Man, give you a microphone, put you out on a floor full of vendors, and you're going to find the interesting stuff.
Well, I had a good mentor. That was this guy named Eric Stromquist. He took me from a pretty inhibited speaker that couldn't think clearly and hold a microphone at the same time. I think I passed the sophomore test, and I'm ready to go to the junior level. So
you're rocking and rolling, big dog. Rocking and rolling. Talk about rocking and roll, man. We dropped a big story yesterday or a couple of days ago on Controltrends about Project Sandstar and how that could change the industry. And I tell you what, it's fascinating stuff. And I reached out to our next guest, to try to get him to come on and go straight to the horse's mouth, if you will, and sort of explain what this is all about, because I think this could change a whole lot with our industry. So how about introducing our second guest?
Again, I'd love to. Our second guest is Alper Olsmesler. He's the managing partner at BASSG and founder of Anka Labs. Welcome to the show, Alper.
Welcome, Alper.
Thank you for having me. It's always an honor.
Big news, yeah.
Yeah, big news. I know you've been working on Project Sandstar for quite some time, and man, it's ready for prime time. So our listeners who might not know what Project Sandstar is all about, how about tell them about what it does and why they should even care?
Yeah, it's basically an application that combines two open source projects, which are written by our industry expert and innovator, Brian Frank. He had written Sedona Framework and Haystack, and basically we are merging those two into a seamless whole called Project Sandstar.
Awesome. Well, we had a chance to interview you and Brian at the NS Summit down there in NOLA, New Orleans, and it was very, very, very exciting then. But I think you've made more progress, and you really have some very valuable, informative information to share.
Yeah, actually, we have done a pilot. I will be able to show you a small pilot that we have done. It's working out well. On top of it, we have extended and improved the framework further, and we are still adding a couple more features, but it's pretty much at this point a prime time ready for testing for other manufacturers as well.
Okay, well, again, let's get some stable datum here. So Sedona, I mean, you're a big Sedona proponent. Why is that important? Again, you got these two things, Project Sandstar and everything else, you're bringing them together, but for the integrator, for the end user, for the consulting engineer, why is it important?
Sedona is the only open source DDC engine out there. It's extensible. It is basically a micro framework. You can do anything with it, and by merging it with Sedona, with Haystack, we actually proved that it is super extensible.
Right. Well, and of course, I guess what I'm sort of getting at is the article we posted earlier on Controltrends. It looks like one of the things that typically happens is you have a manufacturer's controls. The manufacturer has a programming tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, Tritium sort of opened it up at the network level where they can bring different controllers in together. So they sort of took care of the network level, but you still had to have the programming tool for the individual controllers and so on and so forth. So would this eliminate that need? I mean, obviously not on legacy controls, but would it eliminate the need on new controllers? Talk about how that would work.
Yeah, so basically within the current BMS controllers, we have inputs and outputs, and the code usually bounds to those input and outputs. When this happens, basically it creates a hardware-dependent code. The outcome of the DDC file becomes hardware-dependent as well. And each BMS manufacturer writes their own tooling to create that DDC configuration file. The open source Sandstar, so if manufacturers use Sandstar, the DDC code becomes portable between manufacturers. Not only that, the code is self-describing, meaning it's already Haystack based, so we can write other applications and other services right on top of it.
So a guy just sort of asked a silly question. So if you're a manufacturer, why would you do that? It seems like that might be at one level suicide and maybe at another level really, really smart.
It's actually, it's really good question. It is creating a community ecosystem, and being part of an ecosystem is proven to be successful. There are a couple ecosystem examples that are open source. One of them is Linux, the other one is Android, which is a superset of it. So by having an ecosystem, we can actually create more valuable applications on top of it. Because it's open source, they can just download it and get started with it instead of spending money on research and development.
Well, the post was very well received, and that's why we're excited to have you on the show. Eric put that post up yesterday, and it was pounded. In other words, people across the industry at every level would comment immediately about a person that was automated logic, was embracing open source controllers, because in order for us to achieve great, strides into the mission that we're on, and that is to bring these kind of technologies to the middle and small sized buildings, the race to the small space. I think this would give us more leverage for someone that's very interested in finding a solution for buildings that right now have no better control than thermostatic control. So we're seeing technology emerge. Now we're seeing the software. So we see hardware there. Now we're seeing the software there that actually can accelerate this race to the small space. This gives people out there, solution providers, contractors, end users, whomever, opportunities that they didn't have before, correct?
That is correct. And you can actually take it to the further of where we are now. We can extend it for new technologies too, because it's open. It enables us to do that.
Where's your next roadmap for Sandstar? In other words, I know you have a community and it's growing, and we get to watch that. But where's your next milestone that you'd like to see personally or professionally?
That's a great question. So basically, what we so far what we have done is we created the hardware abstraction. That's done. Tag-based control. That's done. We are exposing all the Sedona component slots as haystack grid. That's almost done. What is left to do is, as a big project, we are working on, we have a goal, what I call AI-infused PID. It is a big topic. I can talk about it 3 minutes with a drawing. It's basically, artificial intelligence infused proportional integral deadband is one of the goals that we have within the Sandstar. And with the technologies out there, this is doable, but we will need support and expertise to get there. But Sandstar will enable us to get there because it is open. And I have a small drawing for that. I will actually share it with the community as well.
Well, I have a prediction, and then I'm hoping you can show us something, Alper. You mentioned before the show you probably show us some, but I have a prediction which, dude, how long before somebody comes and just buys you? How much money do they have to back up back a Brinks truck up to get you to sell, or what's the deal, man? You gonna be our next billionaire friend?
Probably not, because I'm open sourcing it. I'll probably be within the industry a spokesperson and a known person. A billionaire, I don't know if our industry grows with the same speed as IoT, then maybe.
Yeah, you're gonna be our billionaire friend. Alper, you got some stuff you can show us, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And by the way, we hope you'll be a billionaire, because you're one of the really good people in our industry, man. And we really been watching you for a while and watching what you've done. And our industry is lucky to have you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So what I will do is I will demonstrate the stack of Sandstar very quickly with a drawing, so that everyone can understand what we are doing and why we are doing it. This method has been working out very well for us overall. And can you see the
yes
screen? Good.
Yes.
So basically, we built the Sandstar with one thing in mind: is how do we get to hardware abstraction, and how do we get tag-based control? So the stack basically is working in this order. I just need to put the pencil for a second. Okay. So the stack works in this order. We basically have Sedona and Haystack working together under one thread, and we have Haystack REST APIs on top. REST APIs. And this is basically regular REST calls. And in the middle, we have something called IPCS, and I'll explain what IPCS is. And within here, we have Sandstar engine. Right underneath it, we basically have a zinc file. This is basically our device zinc. And underneath it, we have device template. And then we have our syscalls. So, and in here, we have Sedona. We have an application that's basically is editing this zinc file. We call it record editor. And it edits the records via REST API calls. So you make a call here and then it gets to here. The second part is within a device template, this is a CSV file which maps a tag called channel to syscalls. So if you have channel 15 and your system call is jumper 914, this is basically where you abstract your hardware. So this is our hardware abstraction. And we abstract our code in here. This device zinc is basically a table. For each grid, we map the channel to it. And I will demonstrate that to you in a second. And here we have Sedona. Within Sedona, what we do is we call for zone air temp sensor instead of hard coding to analog input 1. So we have AI where zone air temp sensor is within the SenseStar engine. What IPCS is, it's called Inter-Process Communication Service. It's a Linux application. We make a data call, we get the rec ID's channel number, and it gives us the curve val as well. So if it's a 74 Fahrenheit, it will return that. So now I will go ahead and demonstrate this on how this works. What I usually do is I keep this drawing, what I just drawn, to the side, and I demonstrate it right from here. That way everyone can see where we are at. All right, so now what we are going to do is we are going to generate a record for the controller. And we're going to create a return air temperature. And we are going to go channel number 15. We go return air temp. So we are within the framework, we are in the record editor area right now. So what we are doing is we are defining a port within device zinc. And in order to explain what the device zinc is, it is basically an open source format that is within Haystack. It's a table. It's called Zinc is not a CSV. It's a clever way of naming the file format. And this is basically a table for each port. For each row, we are defining the port of a controller. And the device template is a file something like this. And this is the device template this year. We are abstracting the system calls to a simple tag called channel, which is a type number. So right now we are defining on channel number 15, which is input number 6, we are defining return air temp sensor. So once I hit OK, we will hit save, we'll go to kind, number. So it's suggesting us the data type. Now it's suggesting us the port type. And now we are going to add the unit, which is used in the conversion process. And we can add the thermistor type, which is the sensor type. And we are adding these tags, which takes the raw data and converts to a curve data. And now it's asking us linear conversion curves. These tags are defined within application, so it's suggesting us the tags that we would have based on the tags that are pre-existent. So we can do raw and curve, and we add enabled. Now this is basically pretty much complete to be ready for our abstraction tags, return air temp sensor. And once we add the return air temp sensor, we can actually add sensor temp and return. We are adding a point query, and this basically adds it in here. And from here, we can add our tags into the system. So you see that this is all red here. It was saved into a database within Folio, and we basically synced it into the application. Now from here on, we can basically jump into the Sedona code, and this is basically abstracted, and we can actually push the code into it now. Now we're logging into the sensor area. So right now, within the application, we are in the Sedona editor. Now, what is happening here is that we don't have a hard-coded AI1. So what we have is zone air temp sensor. And the room temperature is 77.12, which is the room here. It also adds other things, like it adds us to create tag-based control. So you can see that we have cool command, which is 4 stages of cool. What we can do is we can go into our application. We can go into the real-time mode, and we can type for cool, and we can delete cool stage number 4. And you will see that the tag will automatically update to 3. This is basically saying, if you were to tell me run a marathon, I'm not prepared for it. I wouldn't even try it. So this application, because we defined the ports, it wouldn't try to write to cool command 4 because it already knows that it doesn't have that capability. We can also do other things like, let's say we are doing a rooftop unit control, and the rooftop unit control doesn't have outside air damper. So this is called atomic programming. So we would have all possible scenarios of a rooftop. Instead of creating one file for each type of an RTU, we would have one file. Because we are defining the ports, it will automatically adjust. So let's say if there's a tag called Econo, and it doesn't exist. So what we have is we have a folder called cycle folder, and the cycle folder will stop cycling that folder because there's no tag within that. So if you don't have heating stages, you would have a heat folder, no heating stages, not a big deal. It will just stop cycling. The one last not the least, we basically have outside air damper. Within that point, we have a tag called minimum outside air set point. So what is happening here is that we have a damper point record defined, and we have a tag called minimum outside air set point. With simple REST API calls, I can update all my minimum outside damper set points with the REST API methodology. So you could actually do this in a more aggregated way as well for going to all the devices. We are also writing something called shaystack so that we can get historical data or analytics data from SkySpark called Sparks. That is something being worked on as well, so that we can actually get average of all the VAVs from an air handling unit through the SkySpark's clustering model.
Hey, Alper, that's we really appreciate the deep dive in there and showing us how you're doing the tagging and the programming and mapping, and it's really good. But take us to the next level here. Tell us about that AI infused PID loop. What's the next step for Sandstar, and how the community can support you?
Yeah, basically, here's a project that we have done. This is the first project that is using Sandstar, and it has been working great. I will just show you what we are doing here. You can see basically Visualogic tag-based graphics for this given equipment, and we have 4 different cooling cycles, compressors. And the code is literally working based on discharge air set point, discharge air temp, and then we are basically controlling cooling stage 1, cooling stage 2, cooling stage 3, and we have some reheat sequencer. Pretty much within our industry, the systems work in a similar fashion, but to bring artificial intelligence to improve the PID loops, that has not been done yet. And the reason is that there's a lot of manual integration involved to get us to that point. And what we are doing within Sandstar is we are literally exposing the inputs and outputs and the PID loop application as a table within the haystack model. What this will enable us is that we will be able to automatically give the code to an AI application to improve our PID loops. The other part of it is that when you do artificial intelligence and reinforcement learning, you have to have good data. You have to have clean data. Without clean data, the artificial intelligence results aren't good. And there has to be an intermediate process to bring us good data. So you can see within the edge device, we have Sandstar running. SkySpark Uncolabs is connected to Sandstar. We are trending data, and we can do analytics within the device. Now, it can tell us when equipment is not working good. Now, within Sandstar, we are exposing the grid we're exposing the root of Sedona engine as a grid. So I can type 9, and you're going to see that we are in the cool folder. And if I type 10, it will return me the record count object. And you can see how the points are linked where an application can figure out where the PID loop is and what it is connected to based on these information. So it's actually not only that it's exposing out its inputs and outputs, it's actually exposing out its logic as well. This brings us to what we want to do in future. We do want community's help in this. So in order to have an artificial induced PID, we need to expose inputs, set points, and what it is controlling. So we will need to trend this data in order to generate clean data. But just generating the data is not enough, because we are working with physical things. And physical things break, and when they break, they give out bad data. And that data is not good for artificial intelligence. So what we would do in this case is that we would write sparks and find patterns and time spans when things are not working correctly. And then we would remove those times from the time span where we will give this type data to an artificial intelligence like TensorFlow, which Google has open source. So in here, we would do reinforcement learning, we can run SandStar in cloud because it is a Linux application. You can give its inputs and outputs and play with it in the cloud. Once you have this, what we would do is you can play this 999,000 times in the cloud, and it would generate one single file. And that single file is a binary file that is basically would be then be inserted back into our customized AI proportional integral deadband, which will be in SandStar. That way, we won't have any hunting loops. We could have where it is communicating to other PIDs within the system if there's multiple equipment, in which we usually have. So that is one of the larger goals that we have with SandStar, and we would want larger companies to sponsor this large goal that has not been sold yet.
Very
Awesome.
cool, Alper.
Awesome.
Very, very cool.
Again,
right.
and so for somebody to get the support to you, what do they need to do to get active in this? Just remind us again, Alper, where does our the community go to again to get involved in this and make take a look at it, maybe contribute?
Anyone can help with anything. You can help with documentation. You can help with testing. You can help with marketing efforts. Everyone could chip in, and we could grow this all together.
Seems
cool,
awesome.
Alper.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yep.
Well, Alper, how do people get hold of you? How can they get more information? What's the website? Best way to contact you?
Yeah, so for SandStar, it's written by Anka Labs, and ankalabs.com has info. And also, we have a working group under Project Haystack. You can join the working group for the open source items. For graphics and other solutions, you can contact us from bssg.com.
Very,
Super.
very cool. Alper, man, one of our favorite people in the industry. And if you are coming to Atlanta for AHR, come to the Controltrends Awards and you can see Alper in person. We like to think of him as Bruce Wayne, the boy wonder. So if you watch Batman, you'll know what that means. So Alper, thanks so much, my good friend.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Kenny, Alper, what a cool dude, man. One of the really great people in our industry. So let's get behind him and support him any way we can. And that's a call out to our community.
First of all, the impact, it caught a lot of attention. That was a pounded post. I mean, people really, it caught their attention. Anytime you compare, you name drop Elon Musk or you talk about, battery powered cars or whatever, we're all like in the mood for these disruptive changes, and the people that do it. And, you wonder how they start, their origins, and we're actually mapping down a very clear track record with Alper. That he started out, as he said, kind of humbly, in Allerton, whatever. And now he's managing two major efforts. He's doing BASSG and he's doing this SandStar. But the future it bodes well for our industry. I think all these things are going to be competitive forces. I think it's going to get people attracted into our industry. People that would have not normally taken building control seriously because it didn't have any of the fancy dancy or couldn't let people write code, didn't seize upon the opportunities of open source code. Just the open source code brings like a personality type to look at this and say, well, I could probably do that then because, I could work on my own. I'm not hindered, I'm not impeded or I'm unfettered. Whatever you want to call it. These guys that think, 2 o'clock in the morning, a bulb comes on and they sit down in front of their computer and start pumping line code out and they make things turn off and on or make it better. But this whole artificial intelligence thing was kind of neat. Making, keep infusing AI infused, PID.
That was so cool. That was so cool. So my prediction, dude, is by this time next year, he's either bought by somebody and they're taking it to the next level, or somebody's going to buy him and they're going to kill it. So one of those things. It's like, Ford or GM, whoever bought the electric cars back in the day and just, buried it in the back room.
Make this go away.
One way or another. Alper's just too clever and such a good guy. So
we talked about. We already mentioned.
What's your prediction? How long before he gets bought out?
Well, see, he didn't do the right steps to get bought out. If I was working with him as his agent, I would have said, Alper, listen, you want to be an entrepreneur here. So, you want to expose this thing and let it be open source, but you got to have some sort of you have to have something. You have to, the 0 to 1 thing. Remember that book we read, how you got to create a monopoly, at least for a little while in order to get, attract attention, be the first one to do it, and people to buy it.
No, I tell you what, I think he's way beyond that strategy. I might want him to be my agent. I think he's thinking down the line.
He said, you know what, I might be famous, I might be recognized, but I'll never be a billionaire. That's his own words. So.
That's what Elon Musk said too, and that's what Bill Gates said, and that's what Steve Jobs. All of them said that. That's how you know.
Those guys were animals, man. They were business animals. They were like Andrew Carnegie. They
go back and look at the early interviews, Ken. That's the one thing they all have in common, man. Is I don't want to be a billionaire. I'm just doing this for the good of mankind. So, but hey, dude, listen.
Eric, hold on a second. Get that Kool-Aid. Dump that Kool-Aid out. What are you doing?
I'm telling it like it is, man. I'm getting real here, man. I'm getting real. Ask Therese. We should ask Therese this.
I tell you,
I guarantee you, Therese will tell you, man. That's out of the billionaire's handbook. The first thing you say is, "I don't want to be a billionaire." That's how you know that you're on the path to being a billionaire. He's gonna be the richest guy we know. You watch and see. I'm gonna be really nice to him because I like him anyway. But even if he wasn't a billionaire, he'd be my friend. But I'm gonna try to really be his friend. I'm hoping he'll adopt me when he gets bought out.
Well, the thing I liked about him too is he's humble. He gave Brian Frank the kudos he needed because you talk about the guy that really seeded the whole dynamic. The whole brainchild was Brian Frank. He did Sedona and then he did the Haystack, and the thing is that he's still really engaged in it. That interview that we mentioned during the interview with Alper, we had them down at Niagara Summit. We had Alper and Brian Frank, and they were talking about where's their passion, because the thing that really to your point about what makes people go from different levels is they have to have a passion. It has to be renewed. I think some of the superstars in music, for instance, Therese got this Beyonce thing going on. I'm thinking about
what's up with Therese and Beyonce? We gotta start calling her Beyonce.
When I see Beyonce, I think
that's Therese call her Beyonce from now on.
Yeah, well,
get in line.
I think of Madonna and the Beatles. I think all these incredible acts that every 2 years or a year and a half, every album they recreated a new version of music. They didn't go back to the same old stuff, and they created a new dynamic within the same old industry, and it gave them a chance to feature some of their talents, whether it was singing or dancing, whatever.
Kenny, there's a saying based on that called success is the first step to failure, and I think what it is you get people and they get put in a box and they get tired of it, and then they try to break out. If they're not like the Beatles and can be really innovative, then they don't make it. But how many one-hit sort of wonders are there, like in music, for example?
That's extraordinary, and every one of them was a masterpiece in its own right. But I think too is like we saw some of these fabulous corporations bite the bullet because they were afraid to cannibalize some of their cash cow, and some of the money that was coming in had to go into destroying itself and recreating it. The snake has to bite its own tail to do another circle, to make another loop. So I think sometimes we see this where we're not having the right leadership in these incredibly challenging environments. How about who would want to be a CEO of a major corporation that is competing for all their worth and trying to fight for resources and trying to fight for the latest technologies and bring them to market the quickest, the most successful ways? You got to, like Therese mentioned, that the 25 channel partners. In other words, if you want to do something like what Albert does, you got to go all the way into you got to get this part of the channel has to be extended and this part of the channel has to be extended.
I think you're absolutely right. It's very, very challenging. The answer to your first question, who would want to be a CEO, one of those things, give me a golden parachute and I'm in.
Right. Well,
all right, brother. Well,
I want to work for the CEO. I want to work for the CEO. Let him have the heart attack and get fired every 2 years.
The CEOs will always land on their feet. Are you kidding? It's the people under them that suffer the consequences.
Well, true, and I've kind of committed.
The only thing that gets damaged for them is their legacies, right? But come on, man. Some of and no CEOs in our industry, by the way. Our industry CEOs are all great, but you look at some of these other industries. Making $150 million a year and their earnings. I follow Wall Street, so that's how I know. And dude, they get fired. The worst thing that happens is they get $200 million to go away.
Yeah, but that's not that was not what I'm saying. It's almost like being a football coach or being the head coach of any team. You're dependent on the players. So when it comes down to it, you might make one or two critical decisions every game, or you might do a lot of very important work prior to the game. You might inspire your players with great speaking, but the bottom line is you got to wait and see how they play. You got to see if they fumble the football. You got to see if it's raining that day. It's just it's crazy.
No, I totally get that, but I think in our industry it's even worse than that because your analogy, at least you know what the game is. Mm-hmm. And in our industry, the game's always changing. That's what makes
agree.
it so hard.
Because
so
of
you
the
still have to do the
infusion
thing
of
with
technology.
the players.
Yeah.
You still have to do the thing with the players, but then the game might change. I mean, imagine if all of a sudden, you're a football coach and they decide, okay, now you get 5 downs or 10 downs, and now you get whatever.
Or the football field's 1,000 foot long, or the football field's 10 yards long. I mean,
exactly.
You're right. I agree. But so that's why I'm saying it's and I liken it to the commanders I worked for in the military, whatever. They don't sleep. They live a very, highly charged life. They get to have one, exciting moment for every exciting, high, press moment, or press, where they're actually being extolled for the incredible leadership. They're fighting like mad dogs for the next, somebody taking their position, somebody, hey, but anyhow, the final post we had this week was
the
another
mad dog who's biting his tail speaks.
No, I don't want to. I see we want to lead into that because this is a CEO message. Actually, it's from Mike Garceau, General Manager of Honeywell brand, and it's a very good message to Honeywell contractors.
We met at Realcomm Ibicon, right?
You know what? I think it is.
Yeah, he's a super good guy.
Because the name's French, Garceau, right? Do I say that right?
He's a great guy. Great guy.
Anyhow, the big launch thing. Honeywell's getting ready for big things. They got a momentum coming up in October that they're. I've heard some the groundwork being made there. They've got some new products. They're really excited about their Eagle controller and what's next on the horizon there. But it all begins with their contractors, and that was kind of where I was going with the football team. The people. Before we went over to the football field, change the dimensions. You're only as good as the people that embrace you. The ecosystem. Again, to Teresa's point and to Alper's point, they both came up with it. A great product. The testament of a great product is what they say, like Linux and Android. They've got they let it loose, and the community picks it up, and next thing you know, they've got a major ecosystem, and people want it, need it, and add to it, and contribute, and it just keeps going, and it has kind of a mind and a growth of its own. The world that we live in, Eric, and what we always talk about, the race to small space, is contractors. Contractors, anywhere from the highest level, whatever's beyond the master systems integrator, because we're seeing some feedback there that people try to associate with the next level. So I remember when I was 5'11" and a half, and they asked me how tall I was 6 foot. Of course I was, and so the people in the business tend to take themselves, at least typically, want to project where they're at and versus where they're really at, their capabilities. And so you have to have contractors, they have to be trained, they have to have partnerships, they have to have distributors, they have to have a channel that supports them, they have to have training, they have to have the ability to access information 24/7. So what we see here on this release is Honeywell's Building Controls 2018 Contractor Guidebook. And first there's a message from Mike Garceau. It's a very good, very simple, man. He's just talking, as he sees it, that they're committed to investing in the tools and resources and introducing more partner benefits such as Contractor Pro rewards to help make you a success at each and every day. So this is the nuts and bolts, so you can access the direct links here to contact your local distributor or contact your local Honeywell representative from the Honeywell team. You can go online and access the information directly yourself. But the bottom line is that Honeywell is making a surge. I think this is all timely with some new products they're implementing, some new marketing releases, and of course it's going to lead up to the October momentum.
Very, very cool. Well, good to hear that from Honeywell. Exciting stuff going on. And of course, their corporate offices are here in Atlanta now. As a matter of fact, they're right across the street from where the Controltrends Awards are going to be. So hopefully Honeywell will have a big presence there as well. And you get to talk to your Honeywell execs and meet Mike and hopefully the rest of the Honeywell team, Honeywell at the Controltrends Awards, because they're sort of shuffling the deck a little bit, getting some new players in. I think they're reorganizing. I think they're destined for some great things. So with that, Kenny Smyers, no more football analogies. We're going to go.
It's right around the bend, Eric. Right around the bend.
All right. So imagine it's 3rd down, 12. No. Okay. Very special thanks to our guest this week, Therese Sullivan, a.k.a. Beyonce Sullivan, and Alper, the boy wonder, Guzmaler. Man, great stuff this week. We really appreciate you. Appreciate our audience tuning in as always. So with that, go out and have a great week. Remember, be bold, stay in control, stay relevant, and
how about it? Indeed, Eric?
Oh, and I know, and come up with the best football analogy that you send to Controltrends this week will win a ticket to the Controltrends Award. Indeed, Kenny Slash.
What do we do there? Look at that.